all falling back home where I'm from. Thanksgiving's come, Thanksgiving's gone, and my family tells stories around their Christmas tree in the warm living room on Christmas Eve. And the candlelight shimmers as I write down the song. Place far away, family and home as the pen hits the paper. Shadows grow long, but I stay here a soldier. Just me and my gun on this Christmas, I'll tell you truth in my heart from a place that's forgotten. Time, God, and love, I'll stay here, man. My word and faith, there's nothing in this world that I wouldn't trade to go home. I wanna go home. I wanna go home on Christmas Day. Get me out of this place. Take me back to the States, to the place of my birth, greatest country on earth. On this Christmas, this Christmas, but for those who've never seen the leaves fall again, we'll get to spend Christmas with family and friends. See this fall through all the way to the end. Well, who am I to wish for my home more than them? They gave their full measure till nothing was left. For all our freedom, they gave the last breath. They gave it with honor, faith, trust, and love. It just doesn't seem fair, but they'll never get to go home. No, they'll never go home. They've all soldiered on to march with the Lord. May peace learn race, find their families instead. 'Cause we remember the price, that sacrifice that each of them gave. On this Christmas, they had nothing left. On this Christmas, they gave their last breath. On this Christmas, stay strong in the fight. Christmas Day, it's black night. On this Christmas, thank you with all of our hearts. On this Christmas, never understand what you lost. On this Christmas, fight Christmas Day. Die in vain on this Christmas. Leaves are all falling back home where I'm from. Thanksgiving's come, Thanksgiving's gone, but I stay in the fight. I'll soldier on for the ones who will never come home.
And Merry Christmas, everyone. That was Madison Rising and Soldiers Christmas. Great friends of the program, thanks to Stacy. Welcome to Cold War Radio, ladies and gentlemen, live from studio number 1, which means we're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. On this episode, I'm Hutch Bailey Jr., your host deep down in the broadcast bunker. Please follow me on Spreaker, like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. The email to the program is scrtv@live.com. The Cold War Radio patron hotline is 412-206-6208 if you'd like to call the program. If you're listening to the podcast and you'd still like to call the program, you can call the voicemail at 412-567-1460. We'll play that on the show for you if we can. I'm sure we probably will be able to. So there's that. The podcast is available at the405media.com. It streams 8 in the morning Eastern time. You can catch that. It's also on YouTube. It's on the free Cold War Radio app, free in your app store, and just about anywhere that podcasts are aggregated, it is out there. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, it is everywhere. There's no doubt about that. I'm trying to find something here, and I can't seem to do it. All right, there it is. Found it. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, please go to the website, steelcityresistance.com, become a Cold War Radio patron over in the right-hand column. Catch the research room, the video. I just added a film of the 20th Armored Division rolling into Dachau at the end of World War II, an interesting clip in the research room. You can also go to the video page, which is where the audio, or rather the video renditions of our audio clips that we play on the radio are located. And if you want to write to the show, you can do that too. Write to Cold War Radio, P.O. Box 10433 370, Castle Shannon Boulevard, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15234. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so the impeachment, I don't know if that was a hearing. It wasn't really a hearing. I don't know, but it's begun. Let's traverse the turret to the south and go to ATL, the Empire City of the South, and welcome Stacy Rush to the program. Good evening, Stacy.
Good evening, Hutch Bailey Jr. and Sal and everybody out there listening. Glad to be back with y'all.
All right, let's go over to Western Pennsylvania on the outskirts. Let's welcome Sal to the program. Hello, Sal.
Hey, Hutch. Hey, Stacy. How'd you figure I was here? I think you know, and I'm surviving.
There you go. That's always a way to be. Now, just a little inside baseball information. On Monday, I started a challenge. I said that right now we have 26 patrons that have been pulling the sled for several months now. And I said, I want to raise that up to 40. I've seen shows out there that aren't half the show this show is, with over 100 patrons. So I made that challenge, and I got to tell you, 2 people stepped up. I want to thank William for stepping up, and also April C. And she left a nice note. Of course, I thanked him. And when I thanked April, she wrote back, "You bet. Definitely want to support the independent media out there. That is the right frame of mind, April. Thank you very much. You hit it right on the head. That's what this is all about." So there's that. I hope you guys, well, anyway, let me finish that thought. So if you'd like to help us, if I get to 40, and we're talking about going into the new year here, if we get to 40, I'm going to add another day. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but we're going to do it somehow, by hook or by crook. So if you can become a Cold War Radio patron, we'd certainly appreciate that for sure. So we've been witnessing, at least those of us that watched it. Oh my God, I had to turn it off, you guys. It was one of the most ridiculous. It didn't look like any kind of serious operation. I mean, what we saw today, Sal, and I'm going to go to you first because I know you watched this. I saw some of your commentary on Twitter. You basically had, it's the most upside down. It's not fair at all. The Democrats said that it was going to be a fair deal and everybody was going to get to call witnesses and this, that, and the other thing. The first thing they do is brought 4 witnesses, one that the Republicans requested that was a Democrat, and 3 leftist red diaper doper babies from the collegiate world. And I don't know about you, but these people are the same as the diplomats. They think that they're so smart. Go ahead.
Oh, it was driving me crazy, Hutch.
Me too.
Was incensed that they actually did that. And I guess they answered their inner call because they disliked the president that much that they just had to do it and couldn't help themselves. As I said on Twitter, I thought it was downright disgusting. That's not evidence. What evidence?
No, it was a lecture. It was a lecture, and it was boring.
They are not witnesses.
Not at all.
They have opinions just like you, Stacy, and myself have. And yes, they are educated. They have an idea of what the Constitution's all about. But this is not a hearing. It's all a circus. I said kangaroo Congress. I'm going to continue to say it as a kangaroo Congress. It's not to be respected. This isn't some fair and impartial hearing where both sides are to be heard. It is downright ridiculous and disgusting.
It is. And Stacy, I got to tell you that the people that made up this panel, or the witnesses, is what they called themselves, or they were called by the Democrats. One was named Noah Feldman. He was especially repugnant. Looks to be about maybe 40, if he's not 35. And he sat up there. First of all three of the Democrat witnesses all condemned the president and all accused him of committing impeachable offenses. They all did that with no
shocking.
Yeah, but they did it, every one of them. And this guy, Noah Feldman, he went so far as to try to explain to the audience what the founders were really thinking, Stacy. He knows, because he was probably there. So he knows exactly what they were thinking. It was the biggest stretch I've ever seen. It was absolutely horrible. And there was another member, Pamela Carlin, who was just, that's the one you were talking about on Twitter, the shrill, just the hatred oozing from her pores. It was apparent, and it was disgusting, actually. A lot of times I've been overseas a few times, and I think of how the serious people in other governments, especially adversary governments, are looking at our Congress and laughing their asses off.
I know. As you know, I didn't watch or listen to it today at all. I tuned in for about 5 minutes to hear the skinny jean boy you just mentioned and the shrill pussy hat wearing woman speak. And, I just didn't really understand what the purpose was. And I was going to ask you, because I knew you probably would know this. But when we went through the Clinton impeachment, did we need to get professors up to educate the people on what rises to a high crime and misdemeanor? I mean, did we have to do that? Because I feel like if you have to do that, maybe you don't really have a case.
That's exactly right, and that's what they did. I mean, the guy actually said, "Now, high crimes and misdemeanors, adjust misdemeanors." It was ridiculous. It was offensive. It was offensive to me that I need a guy to tell me what the framers meant. We know what the framers meant. They meant don't do it politically.
Right.
Alexander Hamilton laid that out, and that's exactly what we're doing. Alexander Hamilton warned us about Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, and Nancy Pelosi, ABC, CBS, and NBC.
And poor Jonathan Turley. And I say poor Jonathan because, not because every time he did have an opportunity to speak, he was spot on, but he got called on so rarely to speak. But he was just beside himself. You could tell he was really affected by what was going on and how political this is, and how, this could impact our nation as a whole moving forward. And of course, Democrats don't care about that. They don't like the way the country was founded. They want to change, how we handle, whether it's the rule of law or anything for that matter. And they just don't care what the consequences are, because they never think it's going to come back and bite them in the butt. But at some point in time, it will.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, more and more people are talking about insurrection. It's crazy, man. It's when you look at this that's going on. Sal, in Turley's opening statement, in his opening sentence, he said, "I don't support President Trump. I didn't vote for President Trump." And then he laid out the unconstitutional operation that was at hand. It's getting to the point, and I think they made a grave mistake. What do you think, Sal, about them doing this while the president is probably on one of his most important foreign missions of his career so far?
Well, I think that they're just making a strategic decision to move forward, try to get this into the Senate as soon as they can, and try to enact or cause enough damage politically that his campaign suffers. And I believe that ultimately this is what it's all about, because, talking about a little bit what Stacy said, back in Clinton, they had the Starr report. They had an independent counsel, and he was truly independent, where he examined all the evidence.
36 boxes of documents to this committee.
Yes.
That got 3 pages.
So let's just talk about a little bit more. Most of these members and most of the members in the Senate, they're all lawyers. So they know darn well that most of this evidence is inadmissible. If you would go to any court at all, this would all be hearsay. It wouldn't be admissible evidence at all. And let's just assume for assuming that maybe he did want to make a deal and withhold it. That's his job to make sure corruption isn't happening. So I just feel that he's damned if he doesn't. He's damned if he does.
No,
they were going
true.
to try to get him on something, no matter what. And this isn't going anywhere. This is all a big show. Now they have, I call them they're the B teams in there, Nadler's in there. That guy isn't.
He's horrible.
He's he isn't a lightweight, but he is a lightweight. He's
a lightweight now. He wasn't a lightweight 20 years ago.
But he's not as skilled liar as Schiff is. He just isn't. He isn't as good as a liar.
And let's see what happened. Let's see what happened to Schiff. Schiff was, or the president was winding down his NATO visit. He got smoked by Trudeau. Trudeau tried to punk him, and that was a big mistake for Canada. Canada, you're going to pay for that. Trust me. I don't know how, and it probably won't be real evil or anything, but your president blew it. Talking behind President Trump's back, that's a mistake. That's a pussy move, and he made it, and he's going to pay for it, and good. But let's listen to President Trump at this last conference before he headed home about Adam Schiff.
I'm not going to watch, but I'm going to be doing this. It's much more exciting. But you know what? Tomorrow, think of it. They get 3 constitutional lawyers, and we get 1. That's not even smart, because it's not going to matter. And they take 3 and they give us 1. Who ever heard of anything like that? No, but I want them to testify, but I want them to testify in the Senate where they'll get a fair trial.
What do we want to learn from Adam Schiff's testimony?
From which?
From Adam Schiff.
I learned nothing from Adam Schiff. I think he's a maniac.
What would you want to learn if he testified?
I think Adam Schiff is a deranged human being. I think he grew up with a complex for lots of reasons that are obvious. I think he's a very sick man. And he lies. Adam Schiff made up my conversation with the president of Ukraine. And one of the reasons people keep talking about it is that's what they saw. We have a perfectly beautiful 3 or 4 page transcription, and then in the other case, a 2-page transcription of the conversation. But a lot of people didn't read that. How many people called you? A friend of mine called up, a top person in New York called up, great friend of mine, very successful. Gee, I didn't like what was said. I said, oh, where did you see it? Did you read it? No, I didn't read it. I heard Adam Schiff give it. I said, well, that's not what was said. And I sent him a copy of what was said. He said, this is great. This isn't what he said. This guy is sick. He made up the conversation. He lied. If he didn't do that in the halls of Congress, he'd be thrown in a jail. But he did it in the halls of Congress, and he's given immunity. This is a sick person. He's a liar. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi knew he was lying, and she went on her show, Stephanopoulos, and she said he told the truth. So she was lying too. These people are deranged. Okay, anybody else?
Stacy, we've got to find somebody of his caliber to replace him when he's finished, man. He's only got 5 more years. That's 5 minutes in this war.
I know, because this almost 4 years has gone by in a minute,
Right.
And we've talked about it before. They waited Reagan out, and they'll wait Trump out. So we do have to have another disruptor to come into the presidency after he leaves, because at the heart of this matter, it's not about their hatred for Donald Trump. It's about their hatred for the American people who elected Donald Trump, who dared to vote against what they thought was best for us. And so we've got it. It's a must. We have to have somebody, just as fearless to replace him. But I'm afraid that I can't think of one person who could at this moment.
No, well, I can think of a couple, but I don't think it'll ever get to that. I'd like to see Steve Bannon up there, but that's a little nuts. But I'll tell you,
or Stephen Miller.
yeah, there's people out there. It's just whether or not the thing is do they have the same metal? Can they take the same rounds coming in? That's the question, is whether or not they can do that, because that's what they're going to get. I mean, immediately they're going to get hammered by this press. I mean, the press and the Democrats would have taken out any of the rest of those Republicans that were on stage during the Republican primary. So,
absolutely, 100%. And I wonder too if eventually, and I don't know if it will go this far, if we'll find out how much the Obama administration spied on all of the candidates that were running, and maybe some of the favorites, to determine what they could do to try and sabotage that presidency, like they're trying to do to Donald Trump. So I think they would go after any one of them just as hard. And you're right. I don't think any of them could have withstood what's occurred so far to Trump.
But now, if they pay attention, they might be able to learn something. I just wonder how that'll turn out, because it's so critical. Some horrible news now, guys, with Kamala Harris gone. Now Elizabeth Warren is the only person of color to qualify for the next Democrat debate. What are we going to do here? I mean, have you heard this stuff? I mean, these
think
people
it's hilarious that the Democrats are apparently just as racist as we are.
Lord, I mean, it's something.
Whoa! What color is she? I don't know. Can you expand on that?
She's yellow. I mean, she's redskin, I guess. I mean, isn't that what she's? I mean, pale
1024th. Yeah,
pale face. But it is interesting to watch them. I mean, it's a crying shame when you look at minority Democrat politicians, because they're so weak. Nobody was going to vote for Kamala Harris. Give me a break. She slept her way to the top. Everybody knows that. She disrespected her parents and her home country of Jamaica. But it's racist. Cory Booker says so. It's like that's all they got, man. It's even Fidel Castro was saying the same thing. Julian Castro or whatever he looks like a mongoloid.
The thing is that it's not race. If she were likable, she would probably be the toughest candidate for Trump to beat on the Democrat side.
That's the first thing I thought of before I heard her open her mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought, I was like, uh-oh.
She's a female. She's a black female. She's smart.
Good looking.
Good looking, and she can debate.
And Stacy, she's clean. She's clean and articulate.
That's right. That's right. She is, just like Barack Obama,
just like
Joe Biden. But she checks off all of those boxes, but she does have the same Hillary Clinton problem. When you are so inauthentic, the average person cannot relate to you. I think Elizabeth Warren is going to have the same exact problem. I honestly wonder if anyone who is currently in the race is going to end up as the nominee at this point. Not one of them could beat Trump, and besides Bernie and Tulsi and Buttigieg, I don't know that there's anybody out there who can relate to the public at large.
Well, I know one thing, and Sal, you can dispute this, and possibly I'm wrong, but I don't think that the United States of America is prepared for the first wife or whatever he is, Buttigieg. I just don't think we're ready for that. I'm not, for sure. And
I really don't care who he goes to bed with. I don't care who he's sleeping with.
Stop it. I know.
No,
but
I really don't. I don't care what he does behind closed doors. He still is a anti-2A, anti-Second Amendment.
Yeah.
That's for me. That's right out the door. That disqualifies.
The other thing that disqualifies him to me is the way he kowtows to Black Americans, how he patronizes them, and he would be just bum rushed. There's no way that he would ever stand against anybody if they mentioned they were black. And I can't stand people like that. And that's the way he is. And they're on both sides. You know what I mean? It's not just black. Blacks do the same thing, some of them. It's people.
And I hear what you're saying about that. I think, he's just not a viable candidate in the fact that he is not supported by Black Americans. A lot who don't know who he is, and some who do know about his issues with the police force in Indiana. And I think that, he won't be the nominee. But I guess what I was trying to say is that those are the only people that are somewhat relatable, or Yang is actually relatable as well. But none of them have a shot. None of them have a shot, and nor does the establishment want any of them to be the nominee.
Yang likes whipped cream.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I'm sitting here enjoying collecting my pension, you were hard at work and probably missed the video of Yang with one of his supporters on his knees with his mouth open, and Yang squirted whipped cream in his mouth. That happened. Instantly unviable.
He's done, honestly. He'll be done simply because of that.
Well, you have to watch the video, Stacy, because his people are like in shock that he actually did it, and they're pulling him away.
And you know what's so funny is I saw a couple of tweets about it. I didn't watch the video, but I saw someone tweet something like, if it weren't for this campaign staffer, Yang would be in some serious trouble. And I didn't know the guy was on his knees. I saw he was squirting, whipped cream in some people's mouths. And I'm like, who gives a crap? Are we that sensitive that you can't, squirt some whipped cream in someone's mouth to have, some fun or whatever? I didn't realize the guy was on his knees. I had no idea.
It was one of those things, Stacy, that just
cringe-worthy.
Do people really do this? And I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, author of Inside Trump's White House, the real story of his presidency, Mr. Doug Wead. Thanks for coming on the show, Doug. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr.
Hey.
Welcome to Cold War Radio.
Thank you, Hutch. Great to be with you.
I'd like to also introduce my co-host. I have Stacy Rush from Atlanta and Sal from Western Pennsylvania.
Good.
Hi, Stacy. Hi, Sal.
Hello. So nice to have you. I cannot wait to pick your brain about your book.
Oh, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Wead is a New York Times best-selling author and former advisor to 2 American presidents. He served as special assistant to the president in the George H.W. Bush White House. Mr. Wead's books are known for their primary sources. He has interviewed 6 American presidents, 7 first ladies, 19 presidential children, and 12 presidential siblings. In 1970, he co-founded the Charity Awards and was a part of the founding of Mercy Corps, which has or Corps, depending on which administration we're in, which has distributed $2 billion of food and medicine around the world. After dozens of books and articles by anonymous sources, here is finally, ladies and gentlemen, a history of the Trump White House with the president and his staff talking openly on the record. Thank you so very much for coming on the program, sir. It's a breath of fresh air to be able to listen to you tell us the real story about what's going on in the administration after so many anonymous sources have made so many mistakes so many times. what's the most important thing that the audience can take away from your book, sir?
Wow. Well,
or whatever else you want to talk about related to it. That's fine.
Oh no, that's fine. That question's a good one and a profound one. It's that we are experiencing right now peace and prosperity, and it's easy to get used to it, and it's easy for comedians to say, "Oh, I wish we'd have a recession." We don't want that. It's the first time in 40 years since we haven't had a presidency that hasn't invaded somebody somewhere. There was always a reason. Panama, Grenada, Bosnia, Libya, there was always a reason. But we've had 40 years of peace, and we've had unprecedented prosperity. Anything that Hubert Humphrey or LBJ or social engineers of the 1960s ever wanted for the poorest of the poor in our country has now come true under Donald Trump, and it's pretty exciting to experience it.
It certainly is, and it does have a bit of a downside, and I'd like your opinion on this. You see with the prosperity and the lack of real adversity for a large segment. Now, I'm a 35-year Army retired veteran, so I went to some nasty places, but by and large, the country and our youth have not had to do that. In great numbers. And you couple that with the abundance of food and luxury in our country. I mean, I think this is the only country that you can be on total government assistance and be fat. I don't think that happens in other places in the world. I know it doesn't. So I think that, and I want to know what you feel about this. Do you think that that's maybe creating a Petri dish, if you will, where these socialist bacteria start growing and mesticizing and whatever, and I'm not a chemist, so I probably got that wrong, but you understand what I'm saying, that we have these people that have no worries, no real diversity, no problem with food, no problem with much, shelter or anything else, and maybe it's causing them to stray a little bit from what got us there.
Yeah, Hutch, that's a good point. I asked the president. He had watched this whole process, the development of monopolies in this country and big business that became crony capitalists taking advantage of the system. I asked him, was it as bad as you thought it was going to be? Because all his life he had clipped stories out of the newspaper and so frustrated with previous presidents, and his daughter Ivanka would be playing under the desk as a little child and see him ripping out pages in the newspaper and underlining them and filing them. Finally, he becomes president. So I said, was it worse than you thought? He said it was far worse than I thought. And what he was talking about and what he'd experienced is there's so much regulation. This is how he turned the economy around, by deregulation, but regulation was meant to keep you from starting your own company, and that's how the monopolies developed. And then these big monopolies, when there was a recession, a bipartisan stimulus bill would pass. The last one under Barack Obama was about 1,000 pages, which is the size of the Bible. And the stimulus bill exempts those companies from the same regulation that keep everybody else out. So it was a racket, and the companies are multinational, of course. So the president wanted to open it up to the middle class, to create new jobs, new business opportunities, to return to free markets, and that's what he's done. But it has angered the establishment and the people who were making all that money, and that's why all these attacks. These companies own the media, and in some cases they're the sponsors of the media news programs, and they're pretty hot and pretty agitated right now.
Yeah, they absolutely are, Mr. Wead, and I think we're seeing that bear itself out in these farce impeachment hearings that we have going on. But you speak about what he's been able to do with deregulation, and I wonder if you could tell the audience about Jared Kushner's comments on how he thinks Trump was able to turn the economy around.
That's interesting. He felt that Russian collusion actually was a distraction for the media. He had a couple of things to say about that. It was by the way, it was really fun to be able to interview Stacy, all of the president's children, and to get their stories and where they were, what they did when the Mueller report came down, and all of these various experiences. But yeah, Jared, he felt that Russian collusion helped the president turn around the economy because it so distracted the media, and it was such an absurd and ridiculous accusation that the media was focused on Russian collusion, and then the president could deregulate it, that he could, without the media examining every decision he made, and they would have stopped much of the deregulation, and they couldn't have turned the economy around. So that's his take on it. He also tells the story that traveling all over the world, the Trump children, the first 2 years, heads of state would pull them aside, and they would say, "Please tell your father how sorry we are that he's going through this Russian collusion nonsense." And when I heard that, Hutch, I thought, well, I had never had that perspective before, but I thought, of course, if you're the president of France or the prime minister of the UK, or you're the dictator in Iran, you're not going to wait 2 years for the Mueller report. You're going to want to know right now what happened. If you're Benjamin Netanyahu, you pick up the phone and you call Mossad and you say, "I want an answer tonight at 6:00 tonight. I want an answer. I've known the Trumps all my life. You're telling me he's a Russian spy? I got to know." Because you can't run your country and the economy and your defense if the ally you're working with is a spy of the Russians. It was one of the most ridiculous accusations, and America was held hostage to this whole idea for 2 years.
I know, and I think it'll be interesting to see when he wins 2020 in a landslide, if this will finally have the Democrat Party look within, or if we're just going to see the heat turn up that much. I did want to ask you, I feel like I would be remiss without asking you two things. Number one, I always hear that Trump is a narcissist and thin-skinned, and I wanted your impression of that because people that I have met who have met him have a different opinion. And I also wanted to ask you, if you had a different impression of President Trump before you began spending time with he and his children and family and the White House administration, and then after you finished your time with them.
Yeah, Stacy, I'll answer that second question first. My impression of him changed pretty dramatically. For one thing, he's a great listener, and I hadn't expected that. That was a big surprise to me. But he started quizzing me about history, and I was panicky. I was like, wait, I'm supposed to be interviewing you. Don't do this to me. But he's a great listener. And that was new for me. He's far more calculated than I suspected. It looks so chaotic, but I'm reminded of Sun Tzu, who said, "Out of chaos comes opportunity." He talked about that today when he talked about NATO, how he's rebuilt NATO. It was a painful process. It's like a bone that healed improperly. You have to break it again and reset it. And that's kind of what he did with NATO. But he's raised $100 billion. The head of NATO just praises him. And he was outraged. He thought, here, the American middle class is giving its money to defend Germany and France, and while they build high-speed railways and new airports, and our middle class is descending into poverty. They're not keeping their word, the treaty that they themselves signed. And so that was a surprise to me to see how calculated that he was. And that was a good thing for me to know that things are not as haphazard as they appear, but there's a reason, and I liked that. And I was surprised at how positive they all are. Ivanka says, "I refuse to be bitter. I choose to be happy." And I thought that was interesting.
Well, along those same lines, Mr. Wead, let's talk about your book a little bit more. And let's talk about how President Trump, and in your book, you said he never complains and never explains. Tell us, your listeners, tell everyone what you meant by this.
Well, that's and Stacy Hutch, and who am I speaking to now?
This is Sal.
Sal, yes. Yeah, well, that was interesting to me. That whole concept of never complain, never explain comes from Disraeli, the British Prime Minister, and some people have likened Donald Trump. It's so hard to find anybody like Donald Trump, but they've likened him to Andrew Jackson, and they've likened him to Disraeli, because Disraeli was Jewish. He was the Prime Minister of the UK, and he had no great partisan support, and he stayed in power simply because the numbers were so good. He was so good at running the government, and that's why some people think that Donald Trump reminds them of him. But the philosophy of never complain, never explain is you just, somebody misunderstands what you said, you just go on. That's a strength for Donald Trump, but that, Sal, to me, is also a weakness for him, because he won't stop and explain. What I meant was this, or that happened after I had said this, that's why the comment, or this is a verb and this is a noun, like his exchange about Meghan Markle, where he said, I didn't know she had been nasty, and what he meant is that she had been rude because she had denounced him, even though he was the sitting president before the election. So he wasn't saying that she was a rude person. He was saying that she had been rude. Even a nice person can say something rude. But he didn't stop to explain the difference between the noun and the verb and what he meant by it. And when he didn't explain, the media just took over and made it their story. They know he's not going to look back and get into the weeds. So they just use it against him and go right on.
Well, tell me a little bit. We know, President Trump is unique, but we know that George H.W. Bush comes from a political family. Can you share some similarities? Although they're different, can you share some? Do they have some similarities, or are they just different?
Yeah, they were both great listeners. Very different in their decision making. Donald Trump is instinctive. He goes with his gut. George H.W. Bush was very, very deliberate. He would deliberate even after he made this decision. Was that the right thing to do? And he'd labor on about it and spend a lot of time calculating. But to give you an idea of how quick Trump makes decisions, when he went in, he was determined to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. And as you know, 5 presidents in a row said they would do that, and none of them fulfilled their promise. It got so frustrating that George W. Bush said, I'm not only going to do this, I'm going to do it on day one, my first day in office, when he was knocking Bill Clinton, but he didn't do it. So I asked the president about that. What got going? Why didn't they do it? Why did you do it? Why didn't they do it? And he said, well, you get in here and you learn right away, and they tell you immediately there'll be a war if you do it. And Emmanuel Macron said that. He said, there will be a war in the Middle East. And that was exactly what they warned him in Turkey. President Erdogan said, you must be prepared to go to war if you're going to do that. So Trump looked at it and he said, look, these guys, they come in as president. They want 2 things regarding Israel. Number one, they want peace in the Middle East. And secondly, they want to go ahead and move that embassy to Jerusalem like they promised. Those are the 2 things. But they can't move the embassy or they won't get peace. So they don't move the embassy. And then they don't get peace anyway. Right. So they don't get either one. He says, I'm going to move the embassy. Maybe I'll get peace too. If not, I'll get one of them. And that's typically how Donald Trump makes decisions.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Mr. Doug Wead, author of Inside Trump's White House, The Real Story of His Presidency. Mr. Wead, I'm curious, and my point of reference on this is, again, I was in the military for a lot of years, and I've known a lot of chiefs of staff, and obviously it's different in the civilian world than the military, but these people have always been the tough guy. the successful ones have always been the tough guy like Kelly, the ones that I was around. And I see a problem in that position. First with Reince Priebus, I thought that was ridiculous. And then now, and you were able to interview him, Mick Mulvaney. And Mick Mulvaney, to me, just doesn't seem like he fits that stereotypical tough guy image of the guy that's calling the shots everywhere. I'm just curious because I'm on the outside looking in. Of course, I don't know, but you got to see the inside machinations. How's he doing? Is he effective, and does he have staying power in the position, in your opinion?
Well, he's effective because Trump wants to be his own chief of staff, and he there's just too many decisions he wants to make his own. And in his defense, I'll say this. He thinks that the government has been run poorly and that they've made bad decisions over the years, principally with China.
Mulvaney you're talking about.
I'm talking about Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
So he's had chiefs of staff that have hurt and slowed down his own efforts to change government. I'll give you one example. When he came in, he found that the American policy regarding hostages was absolute silence. And this happened for 16 years under George W. Bush, under Barack Obama. If a newspaper or a TV show were highlight on an American held hostage, the government would bully them and say, no, you stop covering that story. And the families of these people were just besides themselves. Their young people, in some cases, were being raped and brutalized and tortured and then murdered and beheaded, and there were hostages being held by governments all over the world. And the reason for the silence, the government justified it by saying, if we make a big deal out of these hostages, it increases their value and more people will be kidnapped, and it makes it harder for us to get them free. But it morphed into something darker, and that was because no one knew what was going on and there was no discussion of the hostages, they were forgotten, and the effort had stopped to save them. Donald Trump was outraged by that, so he had to fight his own State Department. The chief of staff said, no, you don't want to go this way, you don't want to do that. The Pentagon, they all had their ideas. When he finally got free to do it the way he wanted to do it, he started bringing those hostages home. He brought 22 of the hostages home. He didn't get any credit for it, wasn't on the front page. But what he did as a businessman is he squeezed those countries economically. Turkey's an example. They were holding Andrew Brunson as a hostage there in Turkey. And in fact, President Erdogan went on a tour a week before Brunson was released and said, we'll never let him go, and mocked Trump, made fun of him. But Trump took Turkey to the brink of bankruptcy. And finally, Erdogan said, good, great. If you want him that bad, okay, you can have him. And he gave in, and Andrew Brunson came home. So Trump gets frustrated. If he tells somebody he wants to do something, they say, no, you can't do that, Mr. President. They've got all the reasons why and all the traditions why. He doesn't have long to be president. He wants to get things done now.
And that's one of the things I noticed, Mr. Wead, about him. I feel like his business acumen has helped him come in and accomplish so much more than any politician or president had in the past, because he uses his business acumen. And to that point, how important do you think his relationship, his personal relationship before he became president of the United States with Xi Jinping is, and how it will affect the trade negotiations?
Yeah, well, the people around it, his sons, and people tell him that the work he's doing with China, it will not be complete in his lifetime, and we will not see the full benefits of it in his lifetime, but it had to be done. I mean, I worked with the Bushes for many years. They were very pro-China. They got along well with China. They loved China. And it was George W. Bush who signed the WTO. And before George W. Bush, the Clintons, they had Chinese leaders into the Oval Office when they were getting money for their legal defense fund. Your listeners can Google Chinagate and hear the whole scandal and the story. Bill Clinton actually had 15 meetings with China to enter the WTO, but any normal country would not have been allowed to manipulate currency and to commit the crimes they commit, $600 billion worth of theft of intellectual property. So here's China, the largest transfer of wealth in world history outside of the Middle East has been from the American middle class to China.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's a terrible thing. And Donald Trump is so frustrated by it. He'd get the New York Times in the morning as a businessman. He'd read these stories. He tried to build buildings. The only place he could buy windows in the whole world was China. And he just determined, I'm going to turn this thing around. I've got to stop this thing before it's too late. And so that's what he's tried to do. And that's why he's got so many enemies, because these monopolies, these big companies I talked about, many of their deals are with China. Academia, you saw the 3 academics in there saying he should be impeached. All these great universities are totally dependent. The only people who pay full fare are the Chinese students who come there. So it's going to be quite a challenge.
It is, and you know, I got to say, you hit a really big point, and this show is headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I can tell you that we got hit by the first income redistribution, and it wasn't from rich Americans to poor Americans, it was from American workers to the East, and it started in Japan when the steel mills went there, but it quickly went to China. And, of course, George W. Bush was happy. That was his game. I mean, that's been the entire political class's game until Donald Trump. And I think that's one of the reasons that everybody's so apoplectic. I want to finish this out, and I'm going to give you time to, give contact information and things like that about the book and whatever. But I want to know something a little bit less political and a little more human. When you were conducting your interviews, it's clear that you had access to inside the inner circle. And I just have a human question. I wonder how the family does. Does the family ever get together? And I mean primary, with Melania and the kids, maybe Melania, Barron, and the president, because the other kids are grown. But what's the dynamic with the family in the physical White House? Do they get together? Do they have meals together? It seems to be the all-American family, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah, Hutch, that's great. I was curious too. Those were a lot of my questions. There's a great scene in the book. The second day they're in the White House, they'd had the exhausting day of the swearing in, and they're in the state dining room, the adults, they're all having a dinner together. And the kids, there's now 10 grandkids, but back then there were 8 grandkids. They're running through the state floor screaming and giggling and playing a game of hide and seek with Barron, and they're hiding behind curtains in the blue room and under chairs in the red room. And Barron hears this big exclamation from the state dining room. He comes running in. He's sweating and huffing and puffing. What? They say, well, Barron, Laura here just announced that she's pregnant, so she's going to have a baby. And Barron says, good, okay. And then he's off and running back to take care of the little kids. So they're very much a human family, and they've taken to life in the White House as best they can. They know the horror of this criticism that's descended on them and the pain of it, but they're determined to be happy and to take it in stride.
Do they understand, and do they know that the majority of the country, and I don't care what the media says, love them? Do they know
that many do, and they can see the numbers. But Donald doesn't care. He's going to do what he thinks is right. On election night, in my book, I describe on election night early on, they thought they were going to lose, and they came to him to tell him, we're going to lose. We need to get off over to the Hilton to where your people are waiting for you. What do you want to say? What are you going to do? And Donald Trump said, look, I'm just going to go downstairs. I'm going to walk out on Fifth Avenue. I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to tell them I'm a patriot. I love my country. I tried my very best. It didn't work out. Then tomorrow I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to fly to Ireland, and I'm going to play a game of golf. So he was going to be just fine. If he lost, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Of course, it hurt him. But then a few hours later, in the book, there's this scene where he's glued to the TV set. Now he knows he's going to win, and there are these young ladies at Javits Center, and they're weeping because Hillary Clinton's going to lose.
That's awesome.
And Ivanka's saying, "Come on, Dad, come on, we got to go." And he says, "Look at this, and he's looking at these crying young ladies, and he says, "Imagine how they feel, because he knows that's how he felt just a few hours before." And he could empathize with those young ladies. So he will survive whatever happens. But, of course, he would like to be appreciated. All of us feel that way.
Well, that shows he has some compassion, too. He's a real person.
Yeah, he is. There's no question about that. And that's why it drove him so crazy about the hostages. That's why he was so outraged. And we got to bring him home. And we're the richest country in the world. Let's use it. Bismarck, the statesman, said that politics is the art of the possible. That's not true about businessmen, and he's a businessman. With Donald Trump, it's the art of the impossible. When my first interview with him, he pointed to two chairs over there. He said, "Right there." I sat there, and Barack Obama sat right there. And I said, "Mr. President, what's the biggest problem you're facing right now?" And he said, "North Korea. You will have a war with North Korea on your watch." And that was the first thing he took on. If that's the biggest problem, that's what I got to take care of.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Wead, we've interviewed a lot of people on this show, and I got to tell you, this is one of my favorites. So I'm going to go a little off the wall here, and I'm going to give each one of my co-hosts a chance to bid you for farewell. We don't usually do that, but I know they're excited as well. Go ahead, guys.
Thanks, Hutch.
Mr. Wead, it's Stacy, and I just want to thank you so much. And I just want to sneak in one last question before you go. And that is, do you think that Ivanka or Don Jr. will have any plans to run for public office? Do you get any sense of that?
I think they're going to be needed in the future. Jared has said to me, he said, in many years from now, people are going to start to miss Donald Trump.
Yes,
and
they
you're
are.
going to see bumper stickers that say, "Give us back Trump," because of his decisiveness and his leadership and his frankness. There's no political correctness about him. And when that happens, some future president is going to tap Ivanka to be ambassador to the UN or to play some role, or Don Jr. And so, we'll probably hear from them for years to come.
Well, good. Thank you so much, Mr. Wead. It was a pleasure.
Well,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Wead,
Stacy.
Well, Mr. Wead, this is Sal, and God willing, hopefully in about 5 or 6 years, we'll get another book. How about that?
I hope, Sal. I hope.
All right, Doug, thank you very much. And how can people buy your book? And I see you have a website, DougWead.com. You're on Facebook. How can people get in touch with you? And any final comments for the audience, sir?
Thank you, Hutch. The book is InsideTrumpsWhiteHouse.com, and you can go to that website and get it from Walmart or Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or I think they gift wrap and you can get them tomorrow. So you can get it anyway.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for coming on the show, and I feel that we could probably fill another couple hours with this, so maybe we'll get you to come back in the near future sometime, sir.
Thank you, Hutch. I would enjoy that.
All right. Thank you for coming on. Mr. Doug Wead, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Looking for an alternative place to find news and opinion? How about conversing with fellow patriots? Join us Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for Cold War Radio. You will find it at www.spreaker.com or in the Spreaker app. Search for Cold War Radio and you will find it. Since I've been listening, I have met some terrific patriots and learned quite a lot about current events that the mainstream media will never tell you. Please come and join us. Be inspired. You will feel right at home in our Spreaker chat room.
Thank you, Mona. Oh my goodness, that was a good one, Stacy. Wow, we went way over. We could have went much longer.
Oh my gosh! And I had like 10 more questions.
I know, I did too. I did too.
It was he was amazing, and it was so nice to to hear somebody who's had direct contact with him, direct contact with many people. I mean, he interviewed hostages that Trump, was able to free. He interviewed leaders of other countries. He interviewed the children directly. He did a lot of work on this book, and it's all firsthand account. And it's so nice to hear, really good stories come out of it. Really, honest and good journalism, if you will, for lack of a better term there.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I really liked about it is because I have a stepson that's the same way, is the way he portrayed Barron as kind of running the grandkids. He's probably, they look up to him. I mean, the guy's like 6'5" or so. He's huge, man. This kid is big. And what an uncle, man. If you're a little wee pal running around, I mean, wow. Good deal. I almost hate to get back to the news of the day, man. I mean, because it's all depressing and whatnot. But I guess we have to do that. I want to play a couple clips. And if you want to go and see any of this, I put the whole impeachment fiasco on the video page at steelcityresistance.com if you want to go check it yourself. But I want to play a couple clips of what went on, and you're going to hear a repeat here about the Schiff remarks. But Lou Dobbs had Tom Fitton on the program. Let's listen. And this is last night. This is before this hearing even started. So I just wanted to put that to keep it in context.
Judicial Watch. Tom, let's start with first this Ukrainian role in meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. There seems to be some sort of hidebound orthodoxy suggesting that just did not happen, despite obvious evidence and irrefutable evidence in point of fact, and most of it reported first by John Solomon.
Well, it's part of a pattern by the coup cabal. We were working with the Russians to take out Trump, so let's accuse Russia of working with Trump. We were working with the Ukrainians to take out Trump, so let's accuse Trump of intimidating or improperly coordinating with the Ukrainians on targeting Joe Biden over his corruption related to Ukraine. This document is really an unrivaled abuse of power by the House of Representatives. They have this awesome power of impeachment, and they've chosen to abuse it for the petty goal of protecting Joe Biden over his corruption. They spend some time in there trying to defend the indefensible on Joe Biden and Ukraine. And I tell you, I don't know if this is going to convince any more Democrats to the degree they need the votes to vote for impeachment, because this is just a written version of the Gossip Girl impeachment hearings we read about the other day, or we heard the other day, a few weeks ago.
Right. I've been wanting to share with the audience the Trump statement on Schiff today, and if we could go to that soundbite. This, the president on Schiff, and showing some frustration, I'll put it that way, with the Intel chair.
I think he's a maniac.
What would you want to learn if he testified?
I think Adam Schiff is a deranged human being. I think he grew up with a complex for lots of reasons that are obvious. I think he's a very sick man, and he lies. Adam Schiff made up my conversation with the president of Ukraine.
And this, Adam Schiff, on Rachel Maddow's show, I think it is revelatory.
that's not the end of our investigation. So even while judiciary does its work, we will continue investigating. We're continuing to issue subpoenas. We're continuing to learn new information. That work goes on. But we also feel a sense of urgency. This is a president who has sought foreign intervention in U.S. elections twice now.
And there is shift going on. And there is also rising above Capitol Hill a scent of doubt about the radical Dems and their chosen path here. Do you see any sign that they are about to back off from what has turned out to be a disastrous political decision to play pretend impeachment inquiry?
I don't. I think the speeding up of it suggests that they only think they can win if they get a quick vote. Because if the voters get to participate more in the process, if more information comes out, the FISA-gate report comes out, which will demonstrate more misconduct, I think the political calculus changes. And they are in an urgent rush, and the urgency is you've got the Iowa caucuses a month or two away, and they don't want to get in the way of that. This is about as a political a document as anything that the DNC puts out on a day-to-day basis. This is an embarrassment to the House. And if they're honest Democrats, they ought to be asking Adam Schiff, why have you been lying to us for a year, 2 years, 3 years about the goods you had on Donald Trump? You never had anything, and there's nothing in these documents other than gossip and innuendo. And I do see, by the way, Lou, they did manage to purloin, I don't know how, through subpoena or through a leak, Rudy Giuliani's phone records and further abuse of the president's constitutional rights.
Absolutely. The judiciary hearing tomorrow, call it what you will, featuring 4 legal scholars to what? To say that they have some sort of high view of impeachment here that permits this kind of scurrilous, low-life behavior on the part of Adam Schiff and his cronies?
You can have all the scholars you want. It's not going to justify an abuse of the Constitution, an abuse of the president's due process rights. They've already decided to convict him, at least in the impeachment process here. And now they're telling him, well, you can have the lawyers show up for your sentencing. This is an abuse of power. I'm beginning to think that maybe the Republicans should not show at these hearings. They're so outrageous in terms of abuse of the Constitution.
I couldn't agree with you more, Tom, to attach any legitimacy to this farce and effort to overthrow the president of the United States is indeed, to me, lamentable and perhaps will be regrettable on the part of the Republican Party should they fail to at least express their deep opposition to what is a clear effort to overthrow the President of the United States. Tom Fitton, as always, good to see you. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Tom doing yeoman's work, Sal. I agree with the reason I played that clip was the last 30 seconds of it. I look at these hearings and I look at I think Chinese students are 4 times ahead of American students. And I only say that because I know that there's a lot of people out there that despise politics. And they don't pay attention to anything except maybe Lawrence O'Donnell or something they hear in the airport at CNN or whatever. I think maybe the Republicans should consider putting an end to this and just turning their backs on the whole thing. I don't see any real gain for us at these hearings other than political people like us are watching this, but we already have our minds made up.
Well, aside from that, Hutch, they presented no real evidence.
Exactly.
Either at their
but they report, and I'll let you go here, but they report on every single network, including Fox News, that this is a normal operation, that they play clips of those 3 leftist professors. And if you ever wondered why our country's going to hell, it's because of people like those 3 leftist professors.
Well, it reminded me of that professor who got, was yelling out, I'm a professor, I'm a professor.
Yeah.
It reminded me, they reminded me of that person who was just a horrible human being and felt that they could do whatever the hell they wanted to. The hell with everything. The hell with the country. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, I'm right. I'm with these people that are out.
And I work at Harvard. I work at Stanford. Come on, man. I mean,
yeah, like I said before, hey, they're going to turn to dust just like all of us are. So
that's right. That's absolutely right. Now, Stacy, I'm going to start in Texas, but then we're going to ease over to Georgia. Let's listen. And when we get to Georgia, I want you to listen to Pamela Karlan and her proclamation of who the president was involving in U.S. elections. This is unbelievable.
To the Ukraine NSC desk, State Department FOIA shows that he was at an Italy state luncheon. There's Italy ramifications in the last elections. He speaks Arabic and Russian, reported directly to Charles Kupchan, who's a friend of the Clintons' aides in Blumenthal. He did policy work for Ukraine corruption, close continuous contact with the FBI state Ukrainian officials, had a collateral duty to support Vice President Biden. And Biden was Obama's point man on Ukraine. He's associated with DNC operative Ali Chalupa, who we also need. Met with her November 9, 2015, with the Ukrainian delegation. And there's all kinds of reasons we need these three witnesses. And I would ask, pursuant to Section 4, House Resolution 660, ask our our ranking member to submit the request for these three witnesses, because we're not having a factual hearing until we have these people that are at the bottom of every fact of this investigation.
Gentlemen,
I yield back. Thanks for bringing down the gavel, Hart. That was nice.
The gentleman yields back. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The president has regularly and recently solicited foreign interference in our upcoming elections. Professor Turley warns that this is an impulse buy moment and suggests that the House should pause. Professor Karlan, do you agree with Professor Turley?
No. If you conclude that, as I think the evidence to this point shows, that the president is soliciting foreign involvement in our election, you need to act now to prevent foreign interference in the next election like the one we had in the past.
Thank you. Professor Karlan, in 30 seconds or less, tell us why you believe the president's misconduct was an abuse of power so egregious that it merits the drastic remedy of impeachment.
Because he invited the Russians, who are our longtime adversaries, into the process the last time around. Because he has invited the Ukrainians into the process, and because he suggested he would like the Chinese to come into the process as well.
Can you imagine that, Stacy? This woman, this star witness, has just accused the president of the United States of inviting communist China to meddle in our elections. These people are beyond ridiculous.
Well, they are absolutely beyond ridiculous. And honestly, I think that they hurt the Democrats' cause today a lot more than I think, than I anticipated, especially the Karlan woman who came across just as she did in that clip. I mean, she's deranged.
She is.
She is absolutely deranged over Trump winning the election, and you could hear it in her voice. You could hear the anger and the vitriol towards Trump and making the assumptions that he has done something or is guilty of an impeachable offense, when everyone knows who really, I mean, let's be honest, anyone who has read the transcript of that call knows there was no quid pro quo. And the thing that's so frustrating to me is that there was true quid pro quo for decades in our government. Real corruption, real buying of influence. And they don't want to do, they have no interest in that at all. Instead, they want to, make up information about a call when everyone can read the transcript. And it's absurd. And I felt like she, and I'm not sure what the other man's name was, I don't remember his name, but they both came across as just, I'm deranged because Trump won the election. I'm butthurt. Therefore, we must impeach him over nothing.
That's basically what it is. The one guy's name is, oh boy, I had it here, and it's not in front of me anymore. Oh, there it is. Hold on. No, it's not. Anyway, right. Noah Feldman was this guy's name. And I know you got to go, but I want you to listen to one more.
You got it.
She came out and at the end of one of her tirades said, the president can name his son Barron, but the president can't make him a baron. And Matt Gaetz came out after the First Lady did. But let's listen to that, and I'll tell you what the First Lady said.
I remember saying the following: liberals tend to cluster more. Conservatives, especially very conservative people, tend to spread out more, perhaps because they don't even want to be around themselves. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
Do you understand how that reflects contempt on people who are conservative?
No, what I was talking about there was the natural tendency, if you put the quote in context, the natural tendency of a compactness requirement to favor a party whose voters are more spread out.
Well,
and I do
Professor,
not have contempt
I'm very limited on time, Professor. And so I just have to say, when you talk about how liberals want to be around each other and cluster, and conservatives don't want to be around each other, and so they have to spread out, it makes people, you may not see this from, like the ivory towers of your law school, but it makes actual people in this country
when
feel
the
like,
excuse
me, you don't get to interrupt me on this time. Now, let me also suggest that when you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Barron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like you're attacking someone's family, the minor child of the President of the United States. So let's see if we can get into the facts. To all of the witnesses, if you have personal knowledge of a single material fact in the Schiff report, please raise your hand. And let the record reflect no personal knowledge of a single fact. And you know what? That continues on the tradition that we saw from Madam Schiff, where Ambassador Taylor could not identify an impeachable offense. Mr. Kent never met with the president. Fiona Hill never heard the president reference anything regarding military aid. Mr. Hale was unaware of any nefarious activity with aid. Colonel Vindman even rejected the new Democrat talking point that bribery was invoked here. Ambassador Volker denied that there was a quid pro quo, and Mr. Morrison said there was nothing wrong on the call. The only direct evidence came from Gordon Sondland, who spoke to the President of the United States, and the President said, I want nothing. No quid pro quo.
Bell ripped a double to the notch. And this one soars out of here. Wow! It leaves the ballpark on the fly. Hello, Allegheny. Josh Bell with the homer. One of the loudest home runs you'll ever see.
That's what you call getting out.
Flying over the Atlantic Ocean, First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, instantly slapped back. A minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Pamela Karlan, by name, you should be ashamed of your very angry and obviously biased public pandering and using a child to do it in her sixth language. Unbelievable.
For her. I love the fact that she came out and tweeted that immediately.
Real time, boy.
Strongly. That was not a carefully worded tweet. That was a mom saying.
Those were mom guns.
Back.
That's right. Those were mom guns right there. Stacy, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. How can people get in touch with you?
You guys, this was such a pleasure. I'm so glad I got to participate in the interview. Thanks for having me. You guys can most easily reach me at DiscoveringMe40 on Twitter. And I look forward to being back with you next Wednesday. Y'all have a good night.
You too. Thank you very much, Stacy. Let's go to Ken in King George, Virginia. What's on your mind, sir? What'd you think about the interview?
Oh, the interview was amazing, as always. I mean, Mona's knocking these things out of the park, man. I tell you what, if we ever lose her, I don't know what's going to happen to the show. So
it's going to change. You're going to hear a lot more of me.
But yeah, she's a very
doing a great job.
Of the show.
Absolutely, doing a great job.
Yeah. But no, okay. So this woman is supposed to be a college professor, and apparently she doesn't understand or can comprehend the English language. I don't know what sort of subjects she teaches, but what she was referring to there, in my assumption, it was the Trump rally when he said, Russia, if you have the emails, I'm sure that there would be some sort of, news outlet that would greatly appreciate that. He didn't say, hey, Russia, come hack, Hillary's server, which he couldn't have done at the time, because the FBI was already in possession of the said server because it is, of this whole subpoena thing. So, these people that don't pay attention to the timelines and everything else and can't comprehend simple, it depends on what the meaning of the word is, the Bill Clinton thing is just nuts. And then when she said, that conservatives want to spread out, well, yeah, I like to have a little space. I don't like to be crowded, right? But I love my neighbors.
Well, not only that, but you look in the inner city, and I'm there. I live there. I don't live in the inner city, but when you have a situation that politicians have set up a gravy train, a welfare state, corruption follows immediately. I mean, food stamps are the biggest joke that there ever was. They're so corrupted and abused. I don't want to live around people like that either.
I was thinking more, I mean, we live in a very rural area, but it's rapidly expanding, right? We live close to D.C., and people that worked up there, they're with these idiots that are willing to drive 2.5, 3 hours, one way a day, just so they can live out here, and on the weekends kind of unwind and not have to deal with all the crap with, traffic in the city. Well, the more people move here, and we're having some local issues. In fact, but the thing that caught my ear was when she said that they all like to spread out. Well, 2,000 of us showed up last night. This is the first time I've ever gone to a Board of Supervisors meeting, and half the parking lot was filled with people freezing their behinds off because to let the Board of Supervisors know, yes, vote on making King George a Second Amendment sanctuary.
How'd that go?
So, they voted unanimously on it.
Okay, so there's another county.
Well done.
Absolutely.
Well, I was there. I was probably one of the last people that was actually allowed in the boardroom before they met their capacity. So everybody else was kind of outside, and
kind of like a Trump rally.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was talking to a couple of guys outside. People that I know because they know the neighbors, and it's a small community. Everybody knows everybody. We all work with each other and stuff. And I was talking to one guy, and I said, and they were all. He said, "Man," he goes, "It sucked out here because," he said, "we were all trying to, find the live stream on our phones, and the signal sucked out here." He said, "But they were still able to see the comment feed from people that had high-speed internet, And he said one of the comments that he saw go by was like, "Why isn't there more police presence here?" And somebody responded, "Because there aren't any fucking Democrats."
All right, now I'm going to give you a mission, Ken. Next time you go to something like that, you got to throw out there, "Hey, man, you guys got to listen to Cold War Radio, man. I mean, here's the link." But with that, I want to bring a new caller in. This is a new number. Murray, Kentucky. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Crazy Rico. I'm calling from Western Kentucky.
All right, Crazy Rico. What's on your mind, sir? Thanks for calling.
Hey, the reason why I'm calling is how come, the Democrats are always on the offensive and the Republicans are always on the defensive? Why can't the Republicans, in particular the Senate, be on the offense? Because what's going on here is really unprecedented. It is absolutely just horrid to see this going on because it is absolutely just a banquet of lies.
You're so right. You're so right. And you remind me of a conversation that I had with my brother-in-law, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And he's an alpha male now. He did a couple tours in Iraq, and then he became a State Department private security contractor, and he's still doing that to this, not with the State Department, but he's still pursuing active shooter training programs. He's putting them on. And he told me one day, or one night rather, over the holidays, as we were eating, because we're both Army veterans, and he said, Hutch, how come we have a Department of Defense? Why can't we have a Department of Offense? The same thing that you're saying. It's like, why can't we take it to them? And I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'll give you my abbreviated response as to why. And Angelo Codevilla, and you can go to the research room and read this, basically laid it out. He said that there's not a whole lot of difference between Republicans and Democrats until Donald Trump came around. And once Donald Trump came around, now you see people like Matt Gaetz and McCarthy and some others are, that are out there, trying to get this right. But before that, you look at all the Republican presidents and all the Republican candidates for president. Who are our last two? Our last two were Romney and McCain, with Paul Ryan being the VP for Romney. They're all Democrats. They call themselves Republicans, but you know better, don't you?
Well, it's interesting. I think we as a society, as citizens of the United States of America, really have to go on the offense. And what that means is we got to deal with things at the local level right now to get things started. And then we go up to the state level, got to get that controlled. And then finally, hopefully as citizens, we can, in 2020, I'm hoping for a huge, huge turnout for Donald Trump and for any Republican that's running in the Senate and the House. I'm hoping that it changes. And then we look at what happened here. We look at this hoax 2.0.
Hey, Rico, let's just talk about there for a second. Sure. I think we just haven't seen what the Senate is going to do yet, because this bill isn't a bill yet, and I think you're going to, if it goes to trial, if they do actually not dismiss it before it goes to trial, you're going to see some. I think witness number one may be Adam Schiff, and that's going on the offensive because they can call him out. Now, I would really, are they going to have the kahunas to do that? I sure hope so. Will they do it? Again, it goes back to what Hutch was saying. They're all friends. They're all friends.
They're all intermarried. They marry each other. They go to each other's parties. No, that's literal. They really do that. And I'll tell you what I'm afraid of, Sal and Rico and Ken. I'm afraid of that when this gets to the Senate, and it will, I think. I don't know. But if it does, then you're going to have the problem of Turkey Neck Mitch McConnell, who I absolutely don't trust, dealing with Chuck Schumer, and this is going to go to the courts because McConnell is not going to be able to negotiate the rules with Schumer, because that's the first thing they have to do, folks. The first thing they have to do is determine how are we going to go forward with this trial. And the adjudicating official is a compromised, by the NSA, I believe, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roberts. He's going to be the one that's called on to decide on these issues between the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate, and he's too cowardly to do that. He's not going to do it. So I would be very leery about trusting the Republican-controlled Senate because 80% of those guys hate Trump because he's upending their apple cart, Ken.
Oh, yeah. And the funny thing was when I sent you those jelly beans, so I was wearing my Make America Great Again hat, and it was around Christmas time, and I'm at the UPS store, and this lady was behind the counter. She's we're having casual conversation, and she was like, "So where are you sending these?" And I was like, "Well, this Cold War Radio PO box, and she's like, "Well, what's that?" I said, "Well, it's a podcast I listen to." And I said, I support the president and everything. And she's like, I hate Trump. And I said, yeah, but I elected him to do the exact thing he's doing right now. I elected a guy to go up there and kick over the freaking apple cart in Washington, D.C., and he's doing a damn good job at it. So
there you go.
She just kind of shut up.
Now, Rico, I saw something that disturbed me as a retired federal employee, that a majority of federal employees are okay with eliminating hate speech. In other words, are not supporters of the First Amendment. What do you think about our huge administrative state? I think we need to pare it down quite a bit.
Well, when it comes to the freedom of speech, man, I mean, if you want to basically just shock the world and stop freedom of speech, we're not going to know where the dangers are going to be coming from.
Right.
First of all. Secondly, I don't care whether you use the N-word or you use any words that are derogatory. It's hate speech still is free speech. The only time we should put a little bit of a law enforcement on that is if something physically happens. I don't think the people that are in the government are realizing that when you say stuff like that, that means they're going to control you too.
I know. They think they're exempt. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, hate. The word hate is an emotional word. It's not something you can prove. You can't prove it. It's like a war on terror. That was the most ridiculous, stupid, idiotic move that any Republican ever came up with. Was saying there was a war on terror. That was just stupid.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, go ahead.
Or using the term assault rifle. I can turn a golf club into an assault weapon.
And don't let me get 5 gallons of gas.
Right, and this is
what about some fertilizer, huh?
Or what about a Ford F-150?
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I think I stated this at the beginning. This college professor is supposed to be so smart, but apparently she can't comprehend the English language, and she's believing what the media told. Well, this is what the candidate Trump said at the time, and that's for one, she's too stupid to do the research. There's a video everywhere, right? And he said, "Hey Russia, if you have these emails, not hey Russia, go hack the Clintons or whatever, or hack the CIA or to get this stuff." No, he said, if you have this stuff, then hey, you might make. So it's all paying attention to what you hear and comprehending what you hear.
Absolutely. So, Ken, thanks for calling, brother. Yeah. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
No, stay on there, Rico. You're up still. Oh, he didn't leave. Good. Okay, so you're in You're in. I'm just curious. How long have you been listening to the show? I haven't seen you.
I am a first-time caller, first-time listener. This is my first day
excellent.
with you, brother.
I hope you enjoyed the show. I really do.
Yeah, it's because of Roderick's show. The people in the chat room basically asked me to come over, and I said I would.
Well, thank you.
I like what I'm hearing. I'd like to say one last thing before I go.
Certainly.
I'm hoping that this whole thing with the Attorney Barr is not just reports; there are also indictments that go along with it.
The Inspector General report.
No. I wouldn't expect any indictments from the Horowitz report, but maybe the Durham report, I think, is what you're referencing, Rico.
Yeah, I'm not sure which is which.
Well, you got two things. Let's get it out there. You got two things. You've got an inside the Beltway deep state employee for life, Horowitz, who worked at the DOJ and was appointed the Inspector General of the DOJ. And he was tasked with finding out what predicated the FISA court determination. In other words, what started the investigation. That's all he was charged with. And he's a deep state guy. I have no good expectations for that report coming out next Monday. Now, I could be surprised because he is working now for Attorney General Barr, who has also commissioned an additional investigation by Connecticut federal prosecutor Durham, who is renowned in his prosecutions of government agencies and politicians for corruption in the past. So I think we're going to get, and then you have the selective leaks that aren't even necessarily leaks. Maybe none of this ever really happened. But you have people coming out and saying, okay, well, Barr says that he doesn't agree with Horowitz and that, there's going to be no accusations of any wrongdoing by any top-level FBI people and this and that and the other thing. And I think we're just going to have to wait. And I also think, and I want to get your opinion on this, Rico, because I kind of get a feeling that you're a serious guy.
Oh, yeah.
If all of this transpires and nobody ends up the way like this.
You know what people want to know? They want to know when someone's going to jail. I tell people that's the question. More often than not, when I'm walking through an airport or something, people walk up to me. When is somebody going to jail for the wrongdoing that took place in the Trump-Russia investigation or even the Clinton investigation?
Now, if that doesn't happen, I would submit to you, and I will openly advocate for a march on Washington. I really would, because we have numbers that are unprecedented in our camp. They'll never tell you that in the media. But I know.
Well, I think there might be a problem with that, though.
Okay. How's that?
And the problem is that we're individuals, okay, as individuals that are Republican in nature, that our lives could be basically walked all over by people in government. And we are afraid that they could destroy our businesses, could destroy our home life, could destroy our families. We are afraid of that. Are we going to be able to go beyond that and believe that nothing will happen to us if we?
What did the founders say?
Not sure.
And when I mean founders, I mean pre-Constitution. What did the revolutionary Americans say? We're willing to pledge our honor and our sacred treasure. I mean, there comes a point where we have to decide, and I've said this for over a decade, that the reason that we stay here and we keep getting whipped at the stake is because we care about our families and we care about making a living, and we're busy all the time. We don't have time to compete with these communists who are paid for being political activists. In other words, while you're making windows and I'm fixing tanks, they're getting paid for running down our Constitution and passing out lies. And at some point, American men, and I say men because at the end of the day, if it comes down to the point where this government ruling class is going to push my head under their boot, it's going to take a man to take it back. And when American men finally realize that, you got to do something. All right, so what if voting doesn't work? We already did the voting, right? The voting, but now they're telling us, well, that doesn't matter. So what's next? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's the next chapter in this book is how is the end of this going to end up? And then we'll have to make our move then.
Yeah, I think
and this isn't a revolutionary show, Rico. Don't get me wrong. I don't normally say things like that.
But I think you're going into the right direction because maybe things happen to Trump and he gets ousted or something like that. But I think the instant they trample on our rights is the time that we must march down on D.C. With arms, walk into the Capitol building and say, every Democrat, you need to leave, otherwise.
And I would stop short, at least in the first wave. In the first wave, I would stop short of that, and I would say, all right, can we get 1 million people to go to D.C.? And then I would say the next question I would ask is, can we get 2 million road flares? The ones that you see at accident?
Yeah.
And then I would say, can we get this 1 million people to come down here at frickin' midnight and light these flares and let these scum know that we can burn you out anytime we feel like it? We don't have to do it. We just have to show them that we can do it. And I really mean that.
I think once they take and trample on our rights, not only will Republicans be in that march, there will be Democrats.
I think so too. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's no question about that. And the other thing I would say is no, we're not going to freaking clean up after ourselves. We're going to trash this goddamn city.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be Glenn Beck and clean up and be so, mannerly and everything like that. Crazy Rico, man, from Kentucky. Thanks for calling the show, sir. I hope you listen again.
Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good call, man. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Roderick Threets should be on the show on Friday. I don't know if Mona got through to him, but that'll be a good interview, too. He's a good guy from Salt Lake City, Utah. I happened to call into his program last night. That was fun, too. I don't have time to listen to podcasts, Sal, but I listened to that one. It was right after my show. And good show, man. That guy's got a professional operation.
Wow, it must be really strange to be a caller. I mean, how was that?
It was great, man. It was awesome. And I didn't pimp the show or anything like that. I just, commented on what they were talking about. Valerie Z was his co-host on the Conservative Enclave is the name of the program. Let's go to Marlene in Eugene. I was waiting for you to call. Hi, Marlene.
Hi, Hutch. Well, I had to be very patient. I was really glad that Rico called in. A bunch of us were trying to get him to join us tonight. We're glad he did. He is one smart cookie.
Yeah, I am too. And I love new callers.
Oh, you're all smart cookies, but he just happens to be a listening smart cookie.
Oh, that's
there
great.
You go. There you go.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I love new callers, man. Anybody that's out there now we're running out of time tonight. But if you're back there sitting on your laurels, man, you can call anytime. Go ahead, Marlene.
Okay. I was going to say hats off to Melania. I had to talk to her for, I was like, that is so awesome. Telling those people that they cannot be messing with her son.
That woman. Yep, you're right.
I love that woman. She is awesome. She is a beautiful, smart, classy woman. She really is.
We're blessed. We're blessed. You're right.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
And no, we know, ladies and gentlemen, she can never be the president of the United States, because the only way you can break the rules and become a president when you're not eligible is if you're Hillary Clinton. Because Hillary Clinton is the only one that is able to destroy 30,000 United States government emails, which is totally against the U.S. Code, and the U.S. Code determines that if you do that, you are never eligible for public office, but nobody in this fake-ass media world even brought it up.
Right.
I'll never get over that. I'll never get over. It's right. It's right in the U.S. Code.
Right. No kidding. Speaking of that, I saw this little short thing on the American Thinker about Sharia and the Constitution. One of the little paragraphs in there says, law prohibits anyone to hold any foreign office who does not swear full allegiance to the Constitution.
There you go.
Yet hordes of adherents to, Sharia law are unlawfully permitted to hold foreign office whose allegiance is to a set of laws diametrically opposed to the Constitution. Just like what's happening in Muslim Soda in Michigan.
You know what a lot of Americans don't realize is that during the arguments during the Federalist Paper era, the era between 1776 and 1789, when they were trying to get the 57 states, the 13 colonies, rather, to ratify the United States Constitution. One of the arguments was about the First Amendment and the portion of the First Amendment that dealt with religion. And the freedom of religion clause was further explained that religions that do not threaten the Republic, and Islam certainly threatens the Republic. So that was a little wild.
Yeah,
let's bring Ralph from Missouri into the conversation. Hello, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph.
We're never ever going to see a positive news story at all from any major news outlet on Donald J. Trump, even if the man found a cure for cancer and called a press conference.
That's why we have Cold War Radio, Ralph.
Exactly.
Because I'm backing the guy up. This guy is the best president. Now, Ralph, I know that you're around my age. You might be a little older than me, but we're close.
I'm getting 61 here in a couple of weeks.
I'm 58. I'm 58, so we're close. Right? So I know that you're a smart man, and I know that you probably have investments in our country. And I probably know that you've probably been watching them every month like I have, and are wondering what the hell is wrong with the people that are against this guy. I'm getting richer every month, and I'm not doing shit, and I'm getting richer every month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of President Trump.
Yeah, but so Trump is the scourge of the earth. It's like this week with him being over there for the NATO conference. This is the third one he's done, and I think it's like an episode right out of an old TV show, Father Knows Best.
Exactly.
They have Trump and every one of the leaders from the other nations sit down, and he spanks them and says, get your act together, pay up, and right there in front of God and country, and oh, by the way, hold on for 20 minutes. I'm going to stand here and take questions from these idiots in the media.
And you know what's even better than that? Then he turned off to the right and said, oh, by the way, Canada, kiss my ass. You didn't even pay 2%. You're off the program.
Like 1.4 or something.
Right. No, you're absolutely right, man. And here's the thing, Ralph, and Marlene and Sal. You know, the story today should have been President Donald J. Trump saves NATO. That's the story of the day. And it's not being covered by Brett Baer or any of the rest of these sorry asses. President Trump saved NATO this week. He made these people pay up, and now there is $2 billion more in tanks, jets, and everything else protecting the free world. No story in the media.
A little more than that, too, not to go with NATO, but along the same vein, is that Trump this past couple of weeks has been, even though he got a great trade deal with Japan and South Korea, you know, we're allies and all that, but he's looking at them guys going, hey, fellas, you got to pony up some more cash. I got 35,000 troops sitting here, you know, facing North Korea and everybody else. It's like, you know, you guys got to come up with some more cash. You got the economy to do it.
Sal, I want to ask you a question. Another thing that happened today, the Pentagon has decided they want to send 14,000 more troops to the Middle East. It's like the State Department is not letting go, or the deep state is not letting go of the Pentagon.
No, who needs to make some money?
Right.
This is, come on now. What? I don't want to say we're wasting our time over there.
We're wasting our time over there. I'll say it.
Yeah, but what? No, but what? No, I want to make it drill down a little bit more. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What's the mission? Can you define it?
No, and I haven't been able to for a few years. And I got to say, I was initially, I was against the Iraq. Look, I'm looking at the time. Wow, man, the time goes fast on this show. So I got Ralph and I got Marlene. I'm going to ask you both. I'm going to ask them both. Hold on. I'm going to ask them both for final comments, and then we'll close this out. So go to Marlene first. Final comments.
Well, I just going to say I was very interesting interview, and listening to everybody else who's 100 times smarter than I am talk. It was great. I was going to bring up something briefly that Trump is trying to change the way that the food stamps and so forth are given out.
700,000. He wants to take 700,000 off the rolls. God bless him.
I know. I was so happy. Yeah, and they were talking about how it's going to affect Oregon, and I'm like, I don't give a damn. You know, we need to get more people off the friggin' food stamps.
That's right. Here's what it does. Here's what it does. It takes 700,000 people, and it says, all right, I know that a portion of you people are oxygen thieves and you're never going to do anything, but 500,000 of you go get a job and do this, and they will do that because that's the reaction, and it'll be better for America. Ralph.
I agree.
The IG has no subpoena powers, no indictments. If you get somebody to come talk to him, it's kind of a Mother May I thing and all that. Now, as far as Durham and the AG, Barr's got a big problem with the preemptiveness of the IG report and the media trying to spin it as there's no there with the FISA and all that, and that everybody was legit in tapping Carter Page and what's his face phones and all that, and then that's why Trump moved his campaign out of Trump Tower and all that. So if they fired the number 2 Andy McCabe at the FBI, and you got Clapper and all the rest of them squawking on TV whenever there's some heavy stuff coming out of Barr's office or from him personally, I'm saying the best is yet to come, because Andy McCabe was already trying to cut a deal with the Justice Department because he got screwed out of a 20-something year pension and all that when they canned him. Of course, I think he might have been a sacrificial lamb for everybody else to keep their mouth shut, but, you know, all you got to do is get one of them to squeal.
That's right, man. You're absolutely right. Thanks for calling, Ralph. Always appreciate your calls, man. I do. Always at the end of the show, too. Sal, monumental show tonight, man. Real good show.
I got a question for you. Though.
I have to answer a question to Stacy, too, but go ahead.
Do you have any reptiles or alligators or anything at your house?
Negative.
All right, well.
I do like turkey clubs, though.
We're on that in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, I know, man. I know. It's
another new regulation. You got to register your reptile.
Oh, okay. That's some important shit, man. I mean, if this guy, and I'm talking about our mayor, ladies and gentlemen, because this is a Pittsburgh-based show, and that's why Sal's on it. That's why Ward's on it too, because I had to bring it a little closer to home, Sal. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
When things were getting weird, but it's our local government is ridiculous. It really is. But that being said, thanks for coming on the show, man. I think we had a pretty good one tonight.
Yeah, not bad. Great, man. Excellent show. Great interview, Mona. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stacy, great questions. Hutch, you kept it going and you held the team together. So really a big thank you. And thank you to all the callers, especially Crazy Rico.
Yeah, it's nice to have new callers, man.
Yeah, and it really had some good conversation. I wasn't in the chat room as much as I really wanted to be, kind of doing some research on the fly and just doing some reading here while we were talking. But fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Now, and let's not forget that the witness that you watched today, Pamela Carlin, a Harvard or maybe Stanford, I'm not sure which worthless operation she works for, but she donated $1,000 to communist Apache. Is it Apache or Cherokee or Comanche or what tribe does this white woman belong to? I don't know, but her voice nauseates me. And she donated $1,000 to this commie. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to Cold War Radio tonight. Really appreciate the new listeners. And, man, what an interview. Good stuff. Thanks, Mona. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. This is Cold War Radio. We will be back on Friday night with Jack in the northern neck of Virginia. Who knows what we're going to talk about there? Go to rsbn.bandcamp.com. Support Jacob Seals. Support Madison Rising, man. One of my favorite Christmas offerings. Put us on your calendar, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to CPAC in February. It's about to get real. It's about to get real. God bless. Hutch Bailey Jr., I'm out.
eagle-born to those who pledged their lives in sacred honor, was smiled upon by God and freed from chains and iron collar. He is held aloft on unity and by history revered. For preserving peace through strength, his wings now reach across 200 years. But for each of those in 1 year more, God has smiled upon the core, from the Barbary coast to the eastern sand, by sword, by gun, or by bare hand. So it's been and shall be Wead. Though many are born, few are made. Faithful always they shall remain. Dogs to loose when war is waged.
Chesney.